Good morning and welcome to another edition of PharSide Pholios. I am your host, Monica Leek, and we are here finding joy in the genre with our special series of author interviews. Today, we have with us none other than Annetha Jones. She is a former middle and high school principal, an author, educator, speaker, consultant, and promoter of equity and student advocacy. She was named the first and only female African American high school principal in the school district where she resides near Central Florida. She was also named Teacher of the Year, Assistant Principal of the Year, and nominated as a Principal of the Year. She speaks on various panels, mentors young aspiring leaders, and continues to dedicate time and resources to assist underserved students. And because of her experiences, she has a particular interest in supporting students of color. Her career in the secondary field of education as a teacher and educational leader spanned for more than 30 years prior to retiring in 2019. And her mantra is to live a faith-filled life and inspire others through her personal passion for promoting educational equity and equality. So welcome to the Far Side, Annetha Jones.
Thank you so much, Monica, for that wonderful and warm introduction. I'm so glad to be here with you today.
Well, let's dive in. You've written this amazing a book, and as an educator, I can appreciate your insight and expertise. So, can you give our live viewers and those who will be watching by replay something about your journey from poverty to principal?
Absolutely. So the name of my book is From Poverty to Principal, and hence that I was a child in poverty. My mother was a single mother. I did not form a relationship with my father, unfortunately, until I became an adult. So we struggled, and we struggled greatly. Therefore, I was a recipient of free lunch. And my book, I talk about the experience of being placed in a course that was beneath my potential because of that. So I want to utilize my book and my voice to help encourage, promote, and serve the underprivileged children of our communities. And my book's journey was actually one that was well received by those who understand what I'm trying to do. And I'm very, very appreciative to people like yourself, Monica, who are allowing me to spread the word, to help advocate and teach kids to advocate for themselves, because oftentimes our students of color don't receive the services that they so greatly deserve. And I, unfortunately, was one of those kids. And I was forced at a very young age, the age of 14, to speak on my behalf, because in the ninth grade, they placed me in a course. There were phases, and at that time, it was the lowest phase you could be placed in. And it was because I received free lunch, according to what the teacher shared with me. And so I was forced at a very young age to speak for myself. And that's one of the reasons why I wrote this book. The other reason is once I became a high school principal, I was able to see, even more than a middle school principal, behind the scenes on how our students of color are still being underserved. And what I mean by that is there are not very many of those students of color being placed in the higher level courses, the advanced placement, dual enrollment. When it comes to discipline, sometimes, it's issued, but is it always issued in an equitable fashion? So I want to share in my book how parents and students in the village can help our kids get the most out of their educational experience.
Amazing. That is so wonderful. How do you define equity and advocacy within the sphere of education? And what are some examples that you've either seen in your role as an administrator or have experienced personally?
I like that question because that's what my book is about. It's a guide to promote equity and student advocacy. So I like to start with an example for equity. We know that equality and equity, they are extremely important. But what some people don't or may not realize, I found through my journey, there's a difference between equality and equity. Equality is ensuring that everyone receives the same services, the same rights, the same privileges. But when you dig a little bit deeper and you look at equity, equity means that it's very similar, but you're meeting the person where they are and their particular needs. So, for example, you may give every child in the classroom the same exact textbook, but some kids can read well and some kids cannot. So those kids who struggle, you need to meet them where they are and provide them some assistance. And that's where the equity comes into place. I like to share this example. It's actually on the internet. I found that when I was doing some research as well a few years back. There are these kids, they go to a baseball game. Some kids are tall, some kids are short, but they all get the same ticket to get in, the same entrance, and they're all allowed to stand right in front of the fence to see the game up close. Well, the shorter boy, he's so small, he cannot see over the fence. So everyone else is enjoying the baseball game. He got the same rights, but he needed a step to stand on, to see. So to me, that's a great example. Now, you gave him everything the same, but he still couldn't have the same privileges of viewing the game. So give him that box, meet him where he is, and give him a step up, a hand up to help. So that's what equity means to me. So sometimes when you say, oh, you all have the same rights, you all have the same privileges, well, not necessarily. If there's a need to be met, help meet that person where they are to help them reach their fullest potential. And for advocacy, that means the village. That means a child. And in my book, I encourage the students to speak on their behalf, as I had to when I was in the ninth grade. I encourage the parents to be more visible in the school systems because when they know that we're there, they're more apt to do better. I encourage the teachers, the educators, and the administrators to all give our kids what they need. Let's speak on their behalves. If we know they're not getting what they need, let's speak up. And that's what I did. And some people didn't like that, Monica, because I wasn't going to stand by and allow a child not to be served and to receive what they need to reach their fullest potential. So, for example, I had students who I knew could perform at a much higher level. And they were not placed in those courses. They were placed in basic courses. I'm like, nope. So I would do some research. And I know we'll talk about that more later, but that's what it means to me. Having the voice, having the village, and having the support to support the needs of our students.
All right, very good. What was your reason behind focusing on equity, especially for children in Black and Brown communities?
Well, and that's what I was alluding to a moment ago. I know we would get to that. When I became an administrator, I saw the data of our students. So I had some students who were placed in courses that were beneath their potential in basic courses. So I started going in on Saturdays, excuse me, and Sundays, or whenever I could to pull their data, their test scores, the state assessments, any data that would allow me to determine the potential of that child. And when I started doing those things, I found that there were kids who indeed need to be placed in higher courses. So I would direct my assistants or some guidance counselors, whomever, to help get those kids where they need to be. Now, with that being said, Monica, you would think it would be easy. Like, you identify the child, you tell the child you're going to this higher level course, and that's the end of it. Unfortunately, because our students of color sometimes have not been afforded those opportunities, I will never forget the one student in middle school, very bright young man. The counselor actually came to me and said he's capable. She pulled that data and said he's capable of being in a higher course, but he's refusing to go to the course. I said, oh, no problem. I'll talk with him. I went to the child, and initially it was fine. I thought, okay, he'll move. But by the end of our conversation, he says, I don't want to go to that class, Mrs. Jones, because there's no one who looks like me there. And I may be paraphrasing his words, but basically he was saying that he'll be the only Black student in that course. So I told him, I bargained with him, if you give it a shot, if it doesn't work out, we can revisit. Well, he went, he was successful, and I was thrilled.
That that's amazing. That really is. That speaks to a lot of student experiences, Black and Brown
Yeah.
students who are, you know, in that in that academic phase, who are able to achieve, who have the skills, who have the knowledge, but do have those concerns about how to deal with being the one and only in an honors course
Yeah,
or in advanced placement course track. So having persons like counselors and admin who are really um, looking at the data and then having those conversations and are there to support and encourage and to give you those options and have those conversations is crucial for
absolutely.
students, especially at that middle school and high school age where you really see the tracking piece
Yes.
as far as those courses which are what are considered general or honors or
Mhm.
AP. And I know there's like another track in the middle in some districts that between general and honors. But yes, in those different categories. So definitely what you're doing by identifying, defining equity, defining advocacy, and then backing it up with some guidance and instruction for those of us who are in the education atmosphere, whether we're admin or whether we're support personnel or whether students themselves, is just so crucial to have.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So crucial to have. So looking at this next question, one of the buzz phrases over the last couple of years in the educational field has been this idea of having a growth mindset. What do you think about the growth mindset? How do you define it? And how does that impact having a growth mindset, impact your ability to advocate for the students that you serve?
Great question again, Monica. And of course, the growth mindset is important. And I actually did some training on that prior to my retirement. And I feel like having a growth mindset means that someone is putting themselves in a position to expand their intellect. And sometimes it comes with a struggle, sometimes it comes with a challenge, but we need to ensure that we don't stay where we are, which is very critical to our Black and it's critical to all students. I want to be clear. I want to encourage and promote all students to receive the very best education possible, but I have a particular need or an interest rather for our Black and Brown students because I had that experience. I worked with those students and I saw that they were not receiving some of the services that were so needed for those students. So that growth mindset allows them to be open to receiving and expanding on the knowledge base that they currently have. Um, I also like to talk about something called a productive struggle. And a productive struggle is, and sometimes our students, no matter what their race, ethnicity, gender, it doesn't matter, they resist a productive struggle. And to me, the productive struggle kind of aligns with the growth mindset, right? Because that means that you have students who have the potential, but if they stay in those lower level courses, they make the easy A's or B's, but are they growing? Are they expanding their intellect? Well, oftentimes not as much as they should be. So we push them to take those higher level courses like the dual enrollment, the advanced placement, the honors courses, whatever it may be. And when they resist, I've had my students say, that course is too hard. And I say, you're smart. You can do it. You're going to have a struggle. And I define for them, it is a productive struggle, which is good. I embrace a productive struggle. I have a type A personality. And so that means that I'm sure you understand that you're in the field of education. So without that productive struggle, I know I'm not growing. And so I want my kids, the students that I serve, the students that I served in the past, and the ones that I continue to communicate with through their parents or colleagues, to have the growth mindset, to have the productive struggle. To me, they go together. Open your brain, your mind to receive as much knowledge as you can, to expand yourself even when there is a struggle present.
And that also goes to expanding opportunities beyond the classroom, especially when you're getting prepared to decide college admissions or trade schools or entrepreneurship or military service. So, taking those courses and meeting the challenge and allowing yourself to expand and take advantage of those opportunities will set you up and better prepare you for those options later on.
Absolutely, Monica. And I'm actually glad you brought that up because I want to make sure that I'm clear. Um, I want students, no matter what their goals are post high school, post secondary, to be prepared, right? So that means they may go to college, they may go to trade school, as you indicated, they may go straight into the workforce. Whatever their goals are, we want them to be prepared and equipped. So that means getting a very solid education from K through 12. So great point, Monica.
Now, in that first chapter, you discuss your experience with tracking in terms of class placement as a student on free and reduced meals. How does that form of placement impact student perception of themselves and their achievement?
So that kind of goes back to the example I gave about the young man who was very capable of doing very well. So once that was brought to my attention, I was a new principal then, brand new principal then. So it really tweaked my interest to go deeper and to find out how many more kids are in this particular position who are capable of doing better. Now, mind you, as an educator, as a teacher, there were students I identified then as well from the classroom. But I was in the classroom. I was just day to day. You understand how that works, taking care of the students who were in my room and those who came to me before after school. But when you become an administrator, particularly a principal, all those kids belong to you and they are your responsibility. And I took my charge as a principal, which is to give my students excellent service, provide them with the best education I could, and to make sure that they were treated fairly, with excellence and equity and equality as a standard. So I dug deeper into their data. I call parents personally, Monica. On Saturday mornings, I'm on the phone calling my parents and say, okay, this is what I found. I need for your child to come in and take this additional test in order to make sure they are prepared to graduate because they unfortunately were not successful on the state assessment. And those are called concordance scores, by the way. And a lot of our Black and brown parents, from my phone calls and my conversations, were not aware. They had not been provided that information. So I was very happy to share with them. This is not the only way your child can graduate by passing the state assessment. They can take the SAT or the ACT, and as long as they meet a certain point system there, they pass that particular area, they can substitute those scores and your child, and I had several kids meet that, and the parents, I was thrilled. I was almost at tears. It's hard when you're an administrator. You don't want to cry in front of your parents, but I would go in my office and go, oh my gosh, they made it. And so those are the types of things that I found through analyzing the data and becoming a principal. That's one of the things that we are supposed to do. We should not just simply rely on others to provide the information. That is my philosophy anyway. I want to be in the trenches with those who are doing the work for our kids. And so when I would dig deeper, I want to share very, very briefly another story of this young man. He had reached the 11th grade, and I had just gone to the high school and started doing some data digging, etc. And I knew he could be successful in an honors course. So he would talk with me every day at lunch. And so this particular day, I was prepared to get him ready for an honors course. And I was also prepared to get the response I got from the middle school student, like, I'm not doing that. But when I told him, Monica, I have goosebumps right now because I will never forget this. When I told him I'm placing you in the honors course, he said, me, Mrs. Jones, me? in an honors course, it gives me such joy just to reflect on that. Not only did he take the course, he did so well. And every day, Monica, he would run to me, not really run, but he would come to me at lunch and give me an update on how he was doing. And that is something I will never forget. He came from an extremely, for lack of a better word, challenging life. His family home life was, it was a complete disaster. His mother was barely present. He had unfortunate circumstances with, I don't want to share because people would know exactly who he is, but really bad things happened to him. So for this child to take this course and be successful, if I did nothing else throughout my entire educational career, that made me feel like I had done something great and awesome for my student.
That is powerful. Like you plant a seed and you are able to watch it grow and
Oh, yes.
bloom, and who knows what that child will be able to do next and accomplish next, simply because he had an administrator that truly believed in his capabilities. And that sometimes is that little nudge is all it takes. That little, word of encouragement and support, and I'm here for you. I'm in your corner and you can do it. It's sometimes all, a child needs to grab hold of to take that next step.
Absolutely. And I will move on from that one because I'll start crying if I stay. Because when I think about this child, the obstacles, we all think we have obstacles. I thought I had some, but when I look at his story, it just fills me with such great joy. He didn't have clothing, he didn't have the necessities, but at any rate, he's graduated also, by the way. And I'm so excited. So anyway, Monica, I just had to share that story.
We're so glad you shared that story with us. And so, for all of my educator colleagues and all of my admin friends out there, just remember the power of not just the data, but your use of the data to, you know, impact change, to influence, and provide confidence and build confidence in students and support and belief. You'll be amazed by what you're able to do with just words of support and encouragement.
Yes,
Um, Ms. Jones, you talked about having to advocate for yourself as a student.
yes.
Um, how important is the role of parents in that process, and what strategies can you recommend so parents can be their child's best advocate?
Yes, Monica, I did have to advocate for myself. My mother was kind mom, but unfortunately, she wasn't equipped with the tools necessary to get me to where I, ended up going. And I like to mention I ended up going to the Florida A&M University, home of the Rattlers. That gave me such a solid foundation. I just love the HBCU concept, the whole family, the whole village thing. It helped me. I really don't think I would have, well, possibly I would have done what I've done without going to FAMU, but I know I can tell you undoubtedly that it made me know that I can do what I'm doing. So parental support is very important, but some parents unfortunately aren't equipped to handle that, and that's not sometimes their fault. It may be because they didn't receive it from their parents. It may be because there's a generational lack of education. It may be because of poverty. Whatever their circumstances are, some of them can't do it or are not equipped. And so that was with me. My mom didn't know. When I came to her with my need to be removed from that class that was beneath my potential, she did go to the school. She did ask the administrators to remove me, but I had to let her know this is what you have to do. Step one, step two, get it done. So for those kids who have parents who are equipped to be involved, absolutely make sure that you are involved in every stage. In my book, by the way, in the very back of my book, I have a section called Points to Ponder. I just kind of show a little bit there. You can see that. It's called Points to Ponder. And in that particular section, I give parents tips on things that they should be looking out for. Because myself, I have a few degrees, right? I have
Mhm.
two children. My kids took advanced placement, dual enrollment, honors, the whole 9 yards. But I did not realize how much I didn't know until I became a high school principal. There were things that, fortunately, my kids are fine. They're both college graduates and they're doing well. But there were some things that I'm like, well, I didn't know that. So if I didn't know it as an educator, as an assistant principal, I can only imagine that some parents may not know these things. So in my book, I provide some suggestions for parents. Like, for example, how involved are you in their education? Do you review their transcripts? Do you meet with the guidance counselors before school starts to ensure that they are placed in the correct courses, to ensure that they are on track to graduate on time? And if there are any issues, who do I turn to? I give them suggestions and information on that. So to answer your question, parental support is important, but for those students like myself who lacked the necessary parental tools, they have to be able to advocate for themselves, which is why I promote student advocacy through the student, parents, and the village.
And another thing to possibly note is that for parents who may not feel like they have the adequate skills to advocate for their children, some school districts have a parent center,
Yes,
and the parent center provides that kind of information, whether it's for groups that address issues of children that have special needs, or whether it's for students who are academically gifted, or just the range of resources that are available within the district. And you'll have these parent groups that will meet, where you can ask those questions. If you're unable to understand, or you have a contact list of persons that you can reach out to by email or by phone to ask those questions. So that's another way that parents can in some way advocate for their children. And then, of course, there are, some mentorship programs for children and young adults out there, whether they're sponsored by community groups or organizations, nonprofits, sororities and fraternities, along that framework, that serve as advocates for students, that they show up at school board meetings to help and support students, or help students even practice using their voices
yes.
in those settings. So definitely there are opportunities. And so if you get this book, parents, teachers, and admins, when you get this book, because you will get this book, look at those strategies and tips, because they're going to be most helpful for you as you take this journey, because it will be a journey, not just for your kids, but as being a part of the village. We want to continue to be a part of the village for our students. So, in what ways can administrators, teachers, and the community advocate for children of, in need of that kind of support, that for equity and advocacy?
Well, Monica, first of all, you did a great job of summarizing just now how parents can reach out for additional support, whether they are lacking on tools or they are educated with several degrees. It doesn't matter. There are supports through each district, right? And I talk about some of that in my book as well. Additionally, you mentioned the mentoring program. I have a whole chapter on the mentoring program. That was always something, and still is something, very important, near and dear to my heart, for students to have mentors and information from their mentors. And so basically, your question was about how educators and administrators can help through what you just said, through what I'm talking about. Provide the resources, the support, and the information. Have that open line of communication, and ensure and try different ways, because some parents don't respond well to emails. Some
Mhm.
parents may respond better to a phone call. Some parents may respond better to a knock on the door, which, by the way, I have done that before. I've gone to my students' homes. You're not coming to school. Mrs. Jones will come to see you every morning. And then guess what? They start coming to school. So, and I only had to do that a few times. Well, I only did it a few times. But when the word got out, my kids were coming to school. So I would say for administrators, teachers, educators alike, please just make sure that you keep that line of communication open on a regular and an ongoing basis and provide. I don't think you can provide too much information.
Mhm.
I just don't think you can on ways to help kids become successful and graduate from high school.
So, what would be your challenge or goal for those who are going to pick up this book and read it?
So my goal, I'll start with my goal. My goal is for whomever's going to read my book, students, parents, educators, anyone who picks my book up, is to utilize the information in there to help a student. If you know someone who would benefit from the services and the strategies that I provide, please share. Perhaps even donate one of the books. I've donated a book. For example, I'll tell you, I had a woman buy 3 of my books, and she was just sharing with me when I was signing that she has caregivers, and that one of them she knew would benefit from having the book, and she was going to pass it on. And I said, you know what? I'm going to donate this particular one to her because I want her to have, her resources were maybe limited. So share the information, uplift someone. And even if you don't give them a book, give them the information. There are strategies. I provide information to help them navigate, the parents and the students navigate the educational system as far as curriculum, even discipline. Because you know what? Children will get in trouble at some point. Not all kids, but at some point, most kids will have some issues, whether it be minor or major. When they issue consequences, they're not always equitable. Those corrective strategies might go out, but are they being received well or equitable? So I want to make sure that I share that information. So that's my goal: share, share, share. The challenge is that some of my parents who really need the book, for example, like my mom, who would have needed this information, they may not be as informed on how to receive it or how to utilize it best. So I want mentorships and parents who are well versed to help them, support them, because they can do it. All the parents, they can do it with the right resources and the right support.
All right. You've issued the challenge, you set your goals. So we've got to be about the implementation for those watching and who'll catch the replay. For those in our audience who may aspire to be an advocate, what are some recommended training or steps that they can take into becoming an advocate or provide support through mentoring?
Great question. In my book, I do talk about that a little bit, but I also, on my website, I will provide some free 15-minute consults. And if someone wants to go deeper and hire me for more, I can provide that as well on how you can become a better advocate for either your student or someone else's child, or just in general to help kids. But there, as we mentioned before, school districts also have the information. They have the parent groups there, schools themselves. Like I had a coordinator in charge of my mentoring program at the middle school level, and she was absolutely amazing in getting information to my parents on my behalf. So there are things in place to help parents and those who want to be mentors or to help guide kids. There are things in place to help them. Once again, you can reach out to me on my website, AnnethaJones.com, or reach out to me on Facebook or LinkedIn. But there are means to train parents to become mentors and to be very candid. If an adult wants to mentor a child, it's not that difficult. To me, you need 2 things to start with. You need more, but at least 2 things. You need to have a love for children, and you need to have a love for wanting to help children prosper and grow. If you have those 2 in time, if you have those things, you can mentor the students to success.
All right. Thank you for that information on mentoring and advocacy and how to connect with you in order to get that information and insight. Since your retirement as an administrator, what has kept you motivated to continue the work of student advocacy and equity rather than chilling on an island or being somewhere playing bingo? How can you?
So Monica, I'm gonna mix both. You know, COVID's over now, so I will be very candid. I can't wait to take that Caribbean vacation, right? Turks and Caicos or somewhere. So I have to have a nice blend. But to be very candid, what I'm doing, it's innate. It's a part of who I am. And for me not to do it is unacceptable because I had mentors. I have to mention this very briefly. My coach, Coach Betty Jeffers, I have once again goosebumps because I was going to surprise her with my book, but unfortunately she passed away 2 weeks before I released my book. And she was a mentor. She was everything to me. She helped me when I didn't have shoes for basketball practice. She gave me shoes for basketball practice when I didn't have clothing. And so that meant so much to me. So I have to give back. That is a promise that I made a long time ago for those who helped me. I had others that I would watch from a distance. They had no idea they were mentoring me. I unofficially adopted them without asking them or telling them. I would just watch them and emulate them. Some are close to me, some I didn't know at all. So to answer your question, if I don't do it, shame on me. And if not me, then who? It's going to be me. And I want everyone who feels the same as I do to come along on this journey with me to help our kids, black and brown, and all kids be as successful as possible. So that to answer your question, I'm going to enjoy that time because let me tell you, Monica, this retirement life, oh my gosh, it is amazing. At first I thought, what am I going to do? Like when I retire, I'm like, it from day one, I didn't have to ask that question. You get to wake up when you want. You get to sleep when you want. I can go to bed at 1 in the morning and wake up at 10. It doesn't matter. And for a person like me with this type A personality, I was always working like 12, 15 hours a day. I don't have to do that. I get to have fun with people like yourself and help these students and these parents. So I'm going to blend this world and I am loving it.
Well, how can our viewers, one, get the book, and how can they connect with you on social media?
I always love that question too, Monica. So my book is available on Amazon, and as a matter of fact, when I first released my book on pre-sales on Amazon, it went to the #1 new release for educator bios for 5 days, 4 consecutive days, and then a week later, another day. So I was ecstatic. I didn't expect that, but it was a gift from God, right? And then I've got people reaching out to me, say that they're enjoying my book. They want me to communicate with them. I had a couple of school district, well, a representative reach out potentially to use my book for social media. I'm sorry, for professional development. They reached out on social media. So my book's available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and Target. And also, of course, you can reach out to me on my website, AnnethaJones.com. And Monica, I forgot to mention, I just started a YouTube channel, and tonight's Wednesday, so at 7 o'clock tonight, I will have a posting talking about some of the contents of my book each Wednesday night, Eastern Standard Time at 7 o'clock p.m. You can get information from me about my book and how to help students become successful.
All right. Well, we are so thankful for having you, Annetha Jones, for spending this time with us this morning. And we wish you continued success with the From Poverty to Principle, a guide to promote equity and student advocacy, and all of the wonderful projects to come. So to our live audience and those who will watch by replay, make sure you're staying tuned to the PharSide Co-Ed Book Club Facebook page for more author interviews and posts as we celebrate joy in the genre in July. So until next time, many roots, many voices are a part of the infinite story. So plant your seed. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, Monica, and good luck with everything with Farside. I really appreciate you.